Hi, everybody. I'm Dave,
And I'm John.
and this is Coffee and Capes, a podcast by coffee and geek culture enthusiasts. And we're glad that you found us and that you're with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you guys can find us on Spotify. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on YouTube if you really feel an overwhelming need to look at our faces. We don't recommend it though. Just listen to us in the car or listen to us while you're doing whatever. And thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or would like to make suggestions on topics that you would like to hear us wax poetically about, you can send us an email at supers@coffee and the letter N capes.com. So not coffee and or the coffee and symbol. Was that ampersand?
Yes.
Ampersand, right?
I'm never sure if I pronounced that correctly.
I don't know. I don't. I'm going to go with ampersand. So
Yeah.
just the word coffee, the letter N, the word capes.com.
Sweet. Well, today we are reacting to the new movie Dune, which I know just came out this past weekend, but it's also available on HBO Max if you're so inclined.
That's right.
I don't know. I mean, so obviously, maybe you haven't had a chance to see it. Hopefully, you have. It just came out, although it's a story that's been around for like 55 years. So I don't know. I'm not sure how much spoilers apply at this point.
But first, before we get going, we gotta stick with tradition.
Oh my gosh, I forgot.
Yeah, Dave, what coffee are you drinking today?
Okay. So in a previous episode, we were chuckling at you having Folgers at the time, and are you losing your cred there a little bit? Well, it's my turn to be pedestrian. I've got some Dunkin' Donuts coffee today.
Fair enough. People love Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
They really, really do.
I don't get it. And like nothing against Dunkin' Donuts. If there's anybody from Dunkin' Donuts that ever runs across this episode, we're not putting you down. It's coffee. Like there's nothing spectacular about it. I have been known to drink it back in the day when C2L was around and I would coach at 5:00 in the morning. Dunkin' Donuts was open and probably saved many lives because of that fact. But it was just coffee. Like there wasn't anything like over the top about it. It wasn't underwhelming. It was just
right. That's the thing. Yeah, it's there's nothing overwhelming, but there's nothing bad about it either.
It just whelmed.
Yes.
It whelmed.
It does whelm. That's for sure.
Why doesn't anybody whelm anymore?
How about you, John? What are you drinking?
I am actually, I grabbed the bag. My wife was nice enough to save the bag this week. So this is if you can see it, the Starbucks Kenya African blend with well-rounded with notes of tropical fruit and brown sugar. It's a medium roast, which is unusual for me. I'm not usually a medium roast guy. I'm usually a dark roast guy.
Yeah.
But really nice, really good flavor. I'm enjoying it greatly.
Excellent. I can't believe I almost forgot about our coffee section. It's like it's right there in our name.
And it's so important.
It is.
It's gaining a new level of importance that people will find out about in the coming weeks.
That's called foreshadowing, friends.
Well done, sir. Well done. All right, so back to what we were talking about. Yeah, the Dune itself as a story has been out forever. It's probably the thickest paperback on the planet. If you ever need to if you're a parent and you need to hold a 2-year-old down from wandering off, you can just put the book on them.
It acts like Mjolnir in that way.
Yeah, it acts like Mjolnir. Exactly. You just set it on the child and boom.
Yeah.
And it's paper, so it's not harmful.
Right.
And I don't know.
I don't think it's capable of summoning lightning, so I don't think that's
no. But if it is, and you manage to make it happen,
please let us know.
Yeah,
because that would be amazing.
Have you ever read the book, Dave?
I have. I'm pretty sure it was at least 30 years ago. Like I think it was
the whole book.
Yeah. Yes, I read a whole book back there.
No, not have you ever read a whole book? That it's probably the one book that I have more conversations with people about who state I've only read part of it because of how big it is, right? That and kind of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right. And I've read that, although most of my Lord of the Rings trilogy reading was done through audiobook, but that's a conversation for another time. But
Yeah,
Dune,
okay.
I actually read, I think just the one though. I know there's like 2 or 3 or maybe 35 other books. I don't know.
There's a lot.
Yeah. At one point I was trying to remember, did I read multiples? And I think maybe the first one was just so dang long that I felt like I read multiple sequels.
That's fair.
But I don't know. To be honest, I don't remember much specifics about the book. It, the basic storyline, but not much beyond that.
Now, I've only read part of it because it was so long that like I was young, so I just set it down and wandered off.
Yeah.
And that's just what happens when you're young. You get partway through something and you're like, oh look, outside world. I'll go that.
I mean, let's be honest, that happens to us now too.
Yeah, it does. It really does. As is evidenced by this podcast. But I'm way more familiar with the original David Lynch movie, which came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
In which they attempted to cram essentially the whole 8 million page book and into one movie. David Lynch, by the way, phenomenal director. He's done some really good movies. He was the one who did Twin Peaks, the show Twin Peaks, right? He did Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, a lot of really kind of weird stuff is David Lynch's, and you could see that in the original. Have you seen the original?
I have. It's been a long time,
but you can see his flair for like oddity in that original. There was like, you're like, oh, but I enjoyed, and as weird as it was, right? And it was definitely a little weird. I really enjoyed that original movie. I had fun watching it. It was one of those that as a kid I could watch it multiple times over. So I was really excited for this to come out.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this one too. I think I wouldn't necessarily call myself a big fan. As I've said, I don't even hardly remember specifics about the stories, but the trailers were pretty unavoidable, as much as I might have tried to avoid them. But they did their job, man. I was excited to see this movie. I was ready for it. I was ready to see it. And obviously, it's only been out for a few days and saw it already. So
yeah. And I think it's important to let everybody know, like, usually like we're pretty close in proximity around like opinions on movies, but it sounds like this might be the first one that we swing in different directions.
I think so. So let's get into it. John, tell me what'd you think?
I really liked it. I went into it with the idea that one, it wasn't going to be a complete story like the old version was, the original David Lynch film. And that had been made clear, is that if you read any of the information on the movie, that it would be split into multiple films. There was actually a comment made that this would be more like kind of Lord of the Rings-ish, where they broke it into multiple films. And also I was very excited for this because I had seen an article, and I don't remember where, or a statement about it, where somebody had said the feel of this would be more along the lines of like Empire Strikes Back. Not a lot of good guys winning, right? But more than anything, I was really interested in seeing what with more time to explore the story, and with more time to explore the characters, and more time to explore kind of the world, what would they do with it, and how would it look, and how kind of true to feel would it come across. Also, I really enjoy the actors that are in it. Josh Brolin, anybody in nerd culture has appreciation for and love for Josh Brolin.
Suddenly he's in like everything.
I know, and he should be.
Well,
right?
I mean,
his role in Goonies was incredibly important, and he should have won an Oscar. But Josh Brolin, if you ever hear this, we love you, man. You're good. But yeah, I mean, he has been in everything, right? He's Thanos in all the Avengers movies. He was Cable in Deadpool 2.
Right.
I mean, he's literally, and he's in a lot of other stuff too. And he's a phenomenal actor. He really is.
Yeah.
So I was excited to see it with, with him in it. Oscar Isaac's in it.
Yeah.
Zendaya, right, is in it. And I didn't know anything at all about Timothy in any way.
Yeah.
Chalamet. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name, so I don't want to butcher it. But I really don't know. I don't think I'd ever seen him in anything. And then all of a sudden, like, he's popping up as being the next Willy Wonka too, which at some point we can discuss, is it necessary for a third Willy Wonka movie? So, and Jason Momoa is in it, and I'm a big Jason Momoa fan, just as a human being and as a, as an entertainer. I think he does a great job. Plus he has really nice stances on things like the environment and taking care of one another.
Yeah. So also Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And I was not familiar with, I'm looking up the name, so I have it right here. Sharon Duncan Brewster. I was not familiar with her before, but she's in it and does a good job. I will say all the actors, I think, do a very good job.
Yeah. Interesting. Skarsgård, who plays plays the Harkonnen Baron, and then Bautista, who I think has really started to come into his own as an actor in a number of things. Just super entertaining guy to watch, and he's really developed into a great actor, I thought. So I was excited to see this on a number of different levels. And for me, going in looking for like a visual epic, knowing that it wasn't going to wrap things up in a tidy fashion. So I, with that knowledge, I was curious where it would end, like where they would kind of cut that off.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I really, really enjoyed it and thought it delivered on everything that I was looking for out of that. Your opinion, though?
So I think it looks amazing. The visuals are incredible. The sand has layers. I think every actor is a professional and does a good job. I think the ships are interesting. Like they don't necessarily look like the same spaceships you've seen in every other movie set in space.
For sure. Yeah.
I think as much as I remember the story, I think it's pretty darn faithful. I've since read an interview with the director who said that he kept a copy of the book on set, like to refer to and like encourage everybody to read it and whatnot, so that it was, the book really was guiding the way the movie was made. Here's my issue. It left me cold. I wanted to like it. I think all the actors are good. There's nobody, but it didn't move me at all. It didn't stir anything in me. It just felt like to me, it looked amazing, but felt really dispassionate.
Interesting. That's interesting. But and I will say this, right? If you watch the first Dune movie as well, they have that similar aspect. I think it's I felt really good about and was impressed with the dynamic between Oscar Isaac and Timothy Chalamet, right? In terms of the father-son piece. It had a beautiful line in it that I thought was wonderful, that you can see in the preview, but was that line of, then you'll always be all that I ever needed you to be, which was my son.
Yeah.
Right. What a beautiful moment. Like, hey, what if this isn't me? And then that's okay. And that's a great lesson for fathers everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Like
parents everywhere.
Yeah. Parents in general. Like what an important reminder that, hey, you'll just always be what I want you to be, what I ever needed you to be. And that was my child. there's not a lot of humor in the movie, I think, which tends to help people travel emotional gambits,
Yeah.
right? But it's not meant to be funny,
Right.
right? It's not meant to have like the most the I think the funniest moment in the movie was like the Jason Momoa moment with Timothée Chalamet, and he's like, "You been putting on muscle?" He's like, "Really?
Have I? No.
Have I? No."
But
But outside of that, it's not funny.
right. I mean, the whether intentional or not, I assume so. There was it was a nice little nod when um Oscar Isaac's character says he wanted to be a pilot. Like I assume that's a little nod to his Poe Dameron character in the Star Wars movies. Um,
Right.
that's clever and funny, and I like that little moment. I guess here's my issue. One of my issues. I feel like all the best parts we saw in the trailer,
Interesting.
and there wasn't a lot more. You know, sometimes you see a piece of a part. You know, you see a piece of a set in the movie
Right.
and in the trailer, and then you get to the movie and it's a part of a larger whole.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of the stuff we saw in the trailers was kind of it.
I disagree. I don't think it was. I don't think that was it. So I think it depends on what you were looking for too. Were you looking for big, incredible special effects moments? Then yeah, you're probably on point, right? Were you looking for the heart and the meat of the story? It's a slow moving story, right?
Yeah.
It's if you think about it in terms of let's put it up against Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
right? Again, or even the Hobbit movies, right? Um, that Peter Jackson went back and did. Slow moving in the initial portion. Like there's a lot of action at the beginning, and then there's an hour and a half of hobbits walking through the woods. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And that's pretty much how it goes, because that's the story. The story is the development of the relationship and the conversations that take place, and you know, those kinds of things that evolved. I think it did a nice job of staying true to the storytelling aspect of what it originally was, without giving in to the mass market, how do we make this super shiny and flashy all the way through to keep everybody's attention. We've been spoiled with Marvel movies, right? We've been spoiled with like I watched Batman you know, Batman again the other day, and was the Christopher Nolan version, and was like, man, like we just got these constant adrenaline rushes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Where lots of action and then small moments of levity and comedy in between to get you to breathe, and then lots of action, little tragedy, small moment of levity to breathe in between, and then tons of action through the climax in the end.
Yeah.
And if you really think back, if we remove these the Marvel and DC universe, you know, kind of out of things, let's go back to Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back. The first 30 minutes of that movie was Darth Vader and the stormtroopers annihilating Hoth and the escape from Hoth.
Yeah.
Right? Past that, the next hour of that movie is essentially Luke and his introduction to Yoda on a swamp planet, and Han and Leia essentially sitting in a worm cave. There's not a lot that happens.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. But Yoda's hilarious.
Yoda is funny. Yeah.
And you know, there's I don't know what to say about the worm cave thing, other than, you know, it's kind of an interesting build to when it dawns on you that they're in something that's alive.
Right.
I don't know. I'll say this, that maybe it didn't help. Two things. I saw this with my 15-year-old, and he was bored the entire time. Like, and he wanted to go, he wanted to see it, But I mean, he fell asleep for a little bit. He was like fidgeting in his seat. He like leaned on me a couple of times. Like he's like leans his head on my shoulder or leans his feet on my lap or something. Like,
Right.
um, and you know, he had no connection to the story or to the movie from the 80s. Um, and at one point, early on, he leaned over and he's like, "What is this ripoff of Star Wars?"
But see, and that's the funny thing is that like
It came first, of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
it came first. And I
Yeah.
think that, you know, there, and I've seen some of the negatives on it, right? Some of the things people have said, right? That it ended like in a weird way, that Zendaya was in it for a very short period of time and she was made to look like she was much bigger. And she is a much bigger role, right? She's not a small, insignificant role. And I could see being 15 and, you know, being bored in it.
Yeah.
Right. Easily if you're used to and you've been raised on flashy special effects,
which he is and he has.
Right. And it's a desert planet.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can't do a whole lot of visual stimulation with sand.
Right. And that looked like, and I love the, you know, that you could see the grains of spice in the air.
Is beautiful.
That's terrific. And so maybe some of his energy rubbed off on me. I say my other issue I had was just the physical nature of it, like and maybe it was the theater we were in, but there were multiple times I could not understand or hear dialogue because of how loud the sound effects were like in the background.
Really? I didn't have that problem in the theater.
So maybe it was the theater we saw it in.
Did you guys see it in like a theater with like the specialized like
like the Dolby theater here?
Yeah, I've been in some of those and run into that as well, where you can't, like, the special effects and explosions so far overpower in those theaters. And I saw it in a normal like 2D non-IMAX movie theater.
Yeah.
And didn't have that problem. Just so you know.
And I will say this. So I did watch it a second time on HBO Max.
Oh.
And I turned on the subtitles so that I would know what was being said.
Nice.
Because it was bothering me to not. And I will say it made more sense. There were more connections.
Yeah.
Once I knew what the dialogue actually was.
Mm-hmm.
But it still didn't really solve the lack of energy problem for me, or it still just felt dispassionate.
See, and I thought it did there were moments that I thought it just did such a beautiful job sticking to the story.
Yeah.
Right. Staying true to the book. And there were even nods to David Lynch's in there. You know, there are some scenes with the where Paul, you know, Atreides has to put his hand in the box.
Yeah.
And they did that differently, right, than in some ways. But the mother, I can't remember what mother, I want to call her the Mother Tesseract, but that's not right. But, you know, they right, had a whole religion that was
Bene Gesserit.
Bene Gesserit, thank you. And even she was kind of like close to being along lines of like the creepiness from the original.
Yeah.
And there were some really nice moments like that, but expanded upon, and the setting was just done so much better. You know, because we've come so far. You can do so much better.
Well, and I read they filmed the desert scenes on location. That was not soundstage and CGI. That they did a lot of that on location in places just to add to the realism. And that part works. Like it looks, I can't say enough, it looks amazing. I felt like, as even with all you're saying about it's a slow build of the story, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm not a child anymore. I can live with, you know, long, but even in the midst of that, a lot of it felt rushed. Like, we've been on, oh gosh, what's the actual
Arrakis?
Name? Arrakis. Yeah. We've been on Arrakis for a second and a half. And now we're being, you know, they're being sent to hunt us down, which, you know, maybe you have to do to move the story along. But it just felt like there was so much potential, especially for the Josh Brolin character, for Gunny, that he's got this, you know, there's so much interesting there with the depth hinted at, right? With the poetry reading and his quoting and Paul says to him at one point, just how about just a song this time? Like, so, hinting that here's a guy that will sing for you sometimes.
Mhm.
Like there's this depth of character hinted at that we just barely get to know. And okay, spoiler alert here, but actually we don't even see what happens to his character.
And that's, so I was going to bring this up because Rachel said the same thing about him. She's like, she found Josh Brolin's character really interesting. She's like, they just offed him without anything else. I'm like, Gurney is not dead. Like, if you go back and you watch the original, all you saw was Gurney yelling, everybody, like, get everything with guns into the air. And then that smile
Follow
as he
me.
went to war, right?
Yeah.
As he went to battle.
Yeah.
But that was all we saw. We didn't see him die. We saw no explosion that took him out. That's the last moment that we saw. If you go back to the original, right, which wraps the whole story in one film, Gurney shows up again. After that initial attack and after Paul ends up, like, Gurney and some of the other warriors from Clan Atreides, like, make it out and show up again later. Like, Gurney plays a very large role in the overall story. And, you're on the same page. Rachel, they're like, she was like, he's such a, like, what happened? Like, they killed him so fast. I'm like, he's not dead. Okay. He doesn't die there.
Well, and for sure. And I noticed I was looking for it when I watched it the second time. And you're right. He does not die on screen. It just is kind of sort of hinted at with all the explosions around him. But you're right. So hopefully, I mean, I trust that you're right. And again, I don't even remember enough about the book to know whether that's the thing, but we'll say,
I remember,
I'll go with it is. I'll go with you.
If you look up Max von Sydow, don't ask how I remember some of these things. Max von Sydow, I believe, plays the character of Gurney in the original.
Okay.
And if you go back and look, like, Max von Sydow, like, ends up, the end of the book as well. I believe, I could be wrong, or that somebody else that ends up, you know what? Let me just look that up real quick. How I remember who, like, the people are that showed up. But let's go. Let's see. It's Dune 1980 something, 1984. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's look at who was what. Oh no, Patrick Stewart played Gurney. Hey,
oh, wow,
look at that. Max von Sydow played somebody else, but yeah, Patrick Stewart played Gurney. And my understanding, Patrick Stewart shows up like later, I believe. I'm gonna go back now and watch the original.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think, because the other piece is I don't think you kill off somebody like Gurney without showing the death.
Yeah, well, that was one of my complaints. Like, he doesn't even get the courtesy of dying on screen. But now that you say that, it makes more sense that he's probably alive.
Right. It's one of those, like, little cliffhanger things.
Yeah.
Right. That you throw into a movie.
I will say Momoa brought a lot of energy to the, like, he's the closest thing to having some energy on the screen, I think. And his character was interesting. Although I gotta, again, the death scene felt a little recycled. Like, how many times in how many movies you've seen the guy, oh, I'll buy us some time and I'll be the sacrificial lamb, and the main character is running, no, don't. And
I thought it was a great scene. I really liked it. I thought, and you know what? It was, so I agree with you. Jason Momoa brought more energy than anybody else in the film, right? He had a great presence.
He just does. He just has.
He really does.
Also, really, not for nothing, but when was the last time we saw him without a beard?
Right? It was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird. They could have left it on him.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like, they had to do it for a reason. But I appreciated there was a realism to that relationship and his willingness to make that sacrifice.
I agree.
Right. And I think that I don't think it felt forced. I don't think it felt like, the sacrificial lamb of, like, where you'd have that moment of, like, no, it's okay, I'll stay and fight everybody to the death so you can get away. You're like, really? Yeah, really. Thanks, buddy. We could all get away. But you know, and they set that up beautifully through the different scenes that Paul and Duncan shared.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a genuine love from Paul for Duncan, Idaho.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree.
As you could see through like the moment where he went sprinting up and like jumped up and grabbed him and gave him a big hug. And
Right.
you know, Duncan constantly referring to him as my boy. And
Yeah.
you know, there was love there. So I thought it was a very real and understandable moment to have Duncan give him the salute and then fight. The other thing I think it went to demonstrate for us too is when they were talking about going up against House Atreides, and it was the Harkonnen and the Sarkuden. The Harkonnen was going to, they were going to recruit the help of the Sarkuden, and the Sarkuden were like, why do you need us?
Yeah.
And they made it clear that like House Atreides are the most fearsome fighters in, you know, all of the Empire, and they're trained by Gurney and Duncan, Idaho. And so you got to see, right, the fighting prowess of Duncan, who went up against not like regular House Harkonnen, but like the Sarkuden, and took down, I don't know, 10, it seemed like. They kept coming through, and he just kept going at him. And which I think also sets up the realistic expectation that Gurney could get out of that situation, right? Because they're just going up against Harkonnen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like a scene that we've seen before in 100 times. I don't disagree that it's done well. It's just, and maybe that's, you know, what choice do you have, I guess, at that point. But and again, okay, spoiler alert. Duncan takes a sword through the chest, but somehow after breathing for a couple of seconds is able to get back up and come back at it. You know, I mean, that happens in happens in every single scene like that.
But ever. See, the issue is now is you're doing what our culture is famous for. You're nitpicking something that and not suspending the belief system of like the joy of watching this thing on screen.
Yeah.
Right. It's that the holding on to, we've seen this before. Of course you have. I can literally go through every like movie in probably the last 15 to 20 years and find some way, shape, or form in which we've seen this before. Whether it's the original Matrix movies, whether it's any of like the superhero movies that have been made in the last 20 years, there is not
there's nothing new under the sun.
There's nothing new under the sun. Every sacrifice is the same.
Sure.
Right? Nobody ever is like, I'm going to sacrifice my life for you and eat this bad piece of salmon. Like it's not like that's not entertaining. Although that would be funny to see. You know, so
that's a job for King Shark.
That's a job for King Shark. So good. So good. Sylvester Stallone is King Shark. So good.
Okay, you know, answer me this, John. You're not wrong. Answer me this though. What is the point of a personal shield thing that doesn't stop anything?
So okay, now we're gonna get into like the point where we might agree on something. Like the personal shield thing, I didn't understand. It seemed like the personal shield was effective against like quick hits.
Yeah.
But not against like a slow poke.
Right. And they even said that, right? Like in the training scene between Gurney and Paul, that something about a slow blade gets through the shield.
Yeah, slow blade penetrates the shield.
Yeah.
And you saw it in like the bombing runs where the Harkonnen came in and bombed the Arrakis encampment, because when they were bombing the spaceships, like they were very slow bombs that settled and then slowly made their way through the shield and then exploded. And I was like, what's the point of the shield?
Right. Then? Right. What's the point of a shield that everybody knows how to defeat?
Yeah. It's one of those where you're like, okay. So like there's that piece. I was like, this may send me back to read the book to further understand what was like the idea behind this for Frank Herbert, right?
Yeah.
Because there's, and I get maybe it's forwarding the plot, who knows, right? You're just moving the story forward in some way, shape, or form that you hope nobody's going to notice, like the fact that like you probably could have just, you know, done something else with the ring.
Yeah.
And and Lord of the Rings. Like there's always that thing though within a movie, right? Where you're
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
wait a
Yeah.
second, why, how, huh?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
And
Like,
and again, it's a suspend disbelief thing,
right.
but I do think it's fair to ask a movie to be consistent in its use of its what Roger Ebert used to call MacGuffins. Like
Well, and I
whatever your
thought
thing
they
is.
did that. Like the Shield at no point successfully stopped the slow thing.
Right, but
At no point.
okay, so there was a moment though when Duncan in the beginning, like when the invasion into their house first happened, Duncan throws a knife at somebody and it gets through the shield, which
True.
you think would
Okay.
be the thing that wouldn't be able to get through.
Right. Which again makes me go, well, maybe I need to go back and understand like what was Frank Herbert's thought in this, right? Because and it's interesting. So I think there's points where in movies where you have to suspend your disbelief, and it's
Yeah.
easier to do in certain genres than not, right?
Yeah.
So in this, I mean, it's easier for me to suspend disbelief because it's science fiction.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to make this up as I go, guys. Like there is no precedent for this. Like we can grab little bits from here and we can grab little bits from here. But the reality is this is all in my own head. And I'm just taking things and going wild with them. And then you've got like the last Fast and the Furious movie where like they're flying Pontiac Fiero in space and taking out satellites with it.
Like you do. I don't understand
Like you
what
do,
your complaint
right?
is
Like you
here.
do. And it's like, if we're gonna ground a movie in like some sense of reality, then you have to obey certain rules.
Yeah.
If we're gonna ground it in fantasy, you do whatever you want, right? Like,
Sure.
like I mean,
Sure, but
Avatar?
I think I'm allowed to want them to be consistent in their use of that fantasy.
Sure, you can do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I don't remember the knife throwing as well as you do, but I mean, now that I think about it, it's there, and yeah, it does throw the concept of the shield off, right?
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe we just don't fully understand the shield.
Yeah.
But
apparently the shield was good enough to at least counter some of the poison. Maybe Harkonnens have a different shield technology.
Well, it didn't counter it though. He wound up, because he hovered, he wound up at the very top, and I assumed that as he was up at the top like that it did less damage to him.
Sure.
And then they
must
put
have
him
countered
in
it enough that it didn't kill him right away, like it seemed to everybody else.
Right. And there was that weird oily liquid that they put him in.
Yeah,
and
that was bizarre.
Yeah. And you know who that was, right? The Baron Harkonnen?
Yeah, Starsguard.
Yeah, and you know where he's from.
He's the doctor guy from the Thor movies, right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They did such a good job like making him up to be like just this big, massive, like obese thing, right? Which in the original movie and in the books he is, right? Just hideous. Although in the original movie he was also covered in like hideous boils that they were
which the David Lynch movie accomplished, and it was disturbing. I remember not enjoying looking at that character.
Yeah, it was not okay. And I think there was, and I think some people went in with an expectation that it was going to wrap. They were going to see something additional to it
and see like a complete story.
Yeah, and seem like a complete story. And I didn't. They wrapped it in a way where very clearly it's like there's either a second one or a whole lot of angry people.
Right. Yeah. And actually, I just saw reports yesterday that they've officially said that the part 2 is a go.
My guess is, and this is just my guess, is that part 2's probably pretty close to done. If we're being honest, I would assume like this is one of those situations like Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, where
they kept filming and doing it all.
right.
Yeah.
They kept going with the assumption that they were going to continue. You have to continue to tell the story for it to be complete.
Yeah.
The upcoming story, I think, will win over a lot of the critics of the first one, because in the second half of the original Dune movie is when we started to see like people learning to ride sandworms,
Yeah. Right.
and
And that was hinted at.
yeah, we saw that one person off in the distance riding a sandworm.
Yeah.
You saw like the gun that Paul found during the desert fight scene with the Fremen,
Mm-hmm.
and Javier Bardem, who is another phenomenal actor.
Gosh, yeah, we didn't even mention him.
Yeah, right. Another phenomenal actor. Comes up and says, you get one of these when you've earned one of these.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in the original movie and in the book, right? So if you haven't seen the original movie, I would highly recommend it. It's the special effects have probably not aged well, but the story at least like gets you to kind of an understanding of where this is probably going. But it was the idea that the weapon funneled vocal emanations into an explosion.
Oh wow, I did not remember that.
Yeah. So go back and check it out. It'll be interesting. But yeah, and I think for me it ticked all the boxes that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Like that I was looking forward to.
I felt like the movie didn't really give Bautista enough to do. He's kind of in like 3 scenes. He walks in, grunts or is angry for a moment, and walks back out. I suspect he's got a good chance of being a much larger part of the second part.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is the second half of the story of Dune really is much faster paced, much more explosive, much more energetic than the first one. And maybe that's why I enjoyed this one so much, is I didn't have that expectation that I would see that in this one. I expected to see like a setup, right? Yeah. Like that was my expectation. I wanted to see beautiful sets. I wanted to see good acting, both of which I saw.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see a setup for what would end up being like the explosive second half.
Sure.
And that's what I got. I got just gorgeous everything. Daniel Villanueva is his directorial artistic eye is beautiful. Like phenomenal job. Also, we were talking about people that are in everything. Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Right? Oscar Isaac. And his range of stuff is really entertaining. He's got a good range.
He does.
We got him as Poe Dameron in the Star Wars movies, which I enjoyed seeing him in. We got him as Apocalypse in an X-Men movie.
The less said about that, the better.
Yeah. I don't think we blame that on him, though. We've
definitely not.
That is one of those movies we don't hold him accountable for. That's definitely a writing and direction thing.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see him as Mark Spector and as Moon Knight in the upcoming Disney Plus series.
Oh, I was not aware.
Yes, he will be Moon Knight in the upcoming Disney series.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Trying to look for it. There's a movie he's in. Oh, I've got some friends that absolutely love the movie Inside Llewellyn Davis.
Oh,
that he's like the main guy in.
Oh, I know this movie. He's like a musician or something.
Yeah. But I've got a couple of friends I know a couple of people anyway, that say like that's one of their all-time favorite movies.
I've heard great things about it. He's just a phenomenal actor. I actually like, and I'm sure you knew this from the onset of the movie too, like, that he dies.
Yeah.
Right. And it was one of those, I was like, there was a part of me that it's like, I'm so glad they're staying true to the story. But if they weren't going to in some fashion, could we keep Oscar Isaac for a while longer?
Could he stick around for a while?
Yeah, because he was so good. And I enjoyed the way that he carried himself as the head of House Atreides and his interactions with Paul. You know what I didn't realize from the first movie, and I've got another reason I got to go back and watch it, is that they weren't married, that she was a concubine.
Right. Yeah.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that that was part of that kind of.
I don't know. I don't remember why that would have been important. Like, is that an important part of the story, or is it just a thing because in 1965 or whatever it felt transgressive to make somebody
Probably
concubine? I don't know.
Right. To say like kind of a modern day concubine was probably a little like a little bit kind of an explosive moment, right, for people to read it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting thing that I didn't realize, and made her relationship with Paul and the whole thing about, you're supposed to have born only daughters, and it was like, oh, so she's not really like his partner. She's still very much like part of the religion, and her job is to come in and further that line, that bloodline, essentially.
Yeah. And I think Rebecca Ferguson does a pretty good job. I think
she does.
The character was a little weepy.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. I agree with you.
And often like talking in this whisper, like just say what you're gonna say sometimes. I did, however, like the scene where they escape out of the ornithopter, and the way she used her power there to be like, you will not abuse me or my son. Like, I'm shutting this whole thing down.
Yeah.
And the way she, right. Yeah, that was powerful. I really like that part. And when she pretty easily took care of Javier Bardem's Stilgar character.
Yeah. Right.
Like, she's badass, man. She was great. So just a little too much time kind of.
I agree with you.
Grunting and whining and moaning and weeping.
Yes, I'm 100% on board with you on with that one, because I thought that last scene where she fought, Javier Bardem, we saw like she's no punk.
She's fierce.
She's no pushover. She's not a weak human being, but man, was she portrayed as one through the first like 3/4 of the movie until it got to the, escaping the dragonfly copter thingy.
Yeah.
Which was it seemed weird, like a weird character arc to go from super weepy and super, I don't know if it was done to show her, because she got that way more and more with when it came to her son. So was it meant to show like the depth of her love for him?
Yeah, maybe.
But you could do that without making her look like she's no spine.
Yeah. So I'm glad she got to change that arc. And show us what she's really capable of.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question for you. What did you make of the scene toward the end? So just before Paul's gonna fight, like sort of the honor fight, was a character's name?
Oh,
Jamis, I think. And he has this vision of him. Paul has a vision of him dying. And then the actual fight turns out differently.
Well, not only that, the individual Jamis in earlier visions was telling Paul that he would teach him the ways of the desert.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm lost on that. Like, it seems that it would send it on a completely different like trajectory.
Yeah.
Right. He very clearly, you're right, very clearly had the vision of him dying, of Jamis winning.
Yeah.
I I thought the fight scene was very interesting because it established Paul as a warrior.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like very clearly like a warrior, especially when Zendaya is like, it'll be
He's
an
a
honor
good
for you.
warrior. Yeah. He's a good warrior. He'll make it quick for you, basically. He won't let
Right.
you suffer.
He won't let you suffer. And Paul, fights him, and Paul's mom, he keeps asking him if he would yield.
Right. Yeah.
And he says, no, like that's not, I guess it's Javier Bardem that tells her that's not how we do things.
Yeah.
Right. That's not how this ends. And she says, Paul's never killed anyone before.
Yeah.
Right. And then he does. Now the question is, was he saying that in the vision because that interaction taught Paul about the culture of the desert? Like,
yeah. So yes. And here's where watching it with the subtitles helped me. That in the vision that Paul has of Jamis killing him, whoever the voice is in the background that might kind of sounds like the Bene Gesserit mother, like woman person. The voice says something like, to take a life is to take your own. And something about like it doesn't say this directly, but sort of Paul has to die.
Yes.
In order for Kwisatz Haderach to live. And there was kind of a Bane moment in that, like where in the voice says in that vision something about rise and up. Like,
yeah,
all they needed was like so. the people chanting rise, rise, rise.
Yeah.
But
yes.
So I wonder if the vision was a metaphorical death of Paul Atreides.
Interesting.
So that, in his killing Jamis, apparently, he chooses the path to go on to become, to like kind of set Paul Atreides aside and become all the different names for it. But Kwisatz Haderach is the one that
Kwisatz Haderach
is the one that sticks with me. And that, to me, that jives with Paul choosing that path, right? His mom at the end, Jessica, wants to send him off world. Like, let's make a bargain to get him off world. And Paul says, no, we were sent to the desert, and the desert's here.
Yeah.
But I still don't know how to jive all of that with the earlier visions of Jamis showing him the way and like being a mentor.
Yeah, that I don't know. And so, I'm excited to see what they do with the second one.
Yeah. But not till 2023.
Well, it's all right. We've waited longer for other things too.
Yes,
and we've got a whole series of stuff to keep us entertained between now and then.
We do indeed.
I'm excited.
Overall, I mean, I don't really have to ask this based on what you said, but overall, I mean, when we did Venom previous episode, we did just a simple old school Siskel and Ebert thumbs up, thumbs down. Yep. What'd you give it?
I give it a thumbs up. I had a great time. Now I'm guessing yours is the opposite direction.
See, I'm torn. Like, here's where I need a more nuanced rating system than just thumbs up, thumbs down.
You can give it a thumb sideways.
Can I give it a thumb sideways?
Yeah, thumb sideways.
All right. We just invented a whole new thing. Like, awesome. I didn't dislike it. It's well made. It's professionally acted, and it looks great, and it's so much. And I just wanted to care more.
Well, you know what? It's all right. Maybe when the second one rolls around, it'll hit all the buttons for you. Maybe some things will connect and drop. But in the meantime, everybody, thanks for tuning in to
absolutely
to our Doom review.
Let us know what you thought of Dune. Yeah. Hit us up with a comment on Instagram, or
send us an email.
Send us an email. How do they remind the people how they do those things again?
Yeah, you can send us an email on supers@coffeeandcapes.com, or you can leave us a message on Instagram or a DM on Instagram at coffee_N_capes. So
excellent.
Send us your thoughts.
thanks everybody for journeying with us on this, and we're having a good time doing this. We hope you are too. So we're gonna keep doing it because we like it.
Awesome.
So drink some good coffee and enjoy some geek culture. Until next time.
Till next time, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.